Picture this. It's the summer of 1944, and we are right on the French border.
You've got German scouts peering through their binoculars, and they are looking at a genuinely terrifying sight. I mean, thousands of men, dozens of massive Sherman tanks all rolling into position, prepping for an attack. To those scouts, it looks exactly like an unstoppable American armored division just ready to wipe them off the map.
But here's the crazy part. If those scouts had just managed to creep a few miles closer, they would have seen something completely absurd. Literally 2 American soldiers picking up a 30-ton tank with their bare hands and just casually carrying it across a field. No, it wasn't super strength. Those terrifying tanks were entirely fake.
Enter the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, a top-secret unit you probably know by their much cooler nickname, the Ghost Army. After D-Day, the Allies were pushing into Europe, right? But they were stretched incredibly thin, outmanned and outgunned. The top brass desperately needed a way to trick Adolf Hitler into thinking the Allies were everywhere at once. They needed pure illusion.
So how do you actually build an army of ghosts? Well, you don't go to West Point to recruit elite battle-hardened soldiers. Instead, these recruiters went straight to New York art schools and Chicago theater departments. I'm not kidding, they drafted young fashion designers like Bill Blass, abstract artists like Ellsworth Kelly, architects and sound engineers, and essentially told them to put on combat boots.
Imagine being one of these creatives. You're handed a uniform and given a mission directive unlike anything in military history. They were told, you are going to the front lines of World War II, but you aren't going to fight. You're going to put on a show. Their only real weapon was their creativity.
Now, this wasn't just throwing some stuff in a field. This was a highly orchestrated deception built on 3 distinct layers: visuals, sound, and atmosphere. Let's break down exactly how they pulled this incredible con off, starting with layer 1.
Step 1. Visuals. This team was equipped with a massive fleet of inflatable tanks, trucks, and airplanes, all meticulously crafted from rubber and canvas. And sure, if you're standing right next to one on the ground, it kind of looks like a bouncy castle painted olive drab, but from 3,000 feet up in a German recon plane, absolutely terrifying. They perfectly mimicked a heavily armed division massing on the front line.
But they didn't just inflate these things and walk away. They essentially art-directed the entire battlefield. They'd bring in bulldozers to carve out fake tank tracks leading up to the robber decoys, making it look like they'd actually driven into position. And this is brilliant. They intentionally did a bad job camouflaging them, just to make absolutely sure the German scouts would spot them. It was total psychological manipulation.
There's an obvious catch though, right? Rubber tanks are quiet. You're never going to fool a highly trained German outpost with a silent army. And that brings us to a very important number, 500. As in, giant 500-pound speakers mounted to the backs of armored cars. This is where the sound engineers took over.
These guys built literal sonic arsenals. They took state-of-the-art wire recorders to real military bases and recorded everything. Tanks rumbling, heavy bridge building, even soldiers swearing at each other. Then, under the cover of night, they drive these massive speakers within a few hundred yards of the German lines and just blast it. It was so incredibly loud, the enemy could hear this fake army moving in from 15 miles away.
To complete the con, we hit layer 3, atmosphere. This is where the theater kids really shined. Members of the Ghost Army would go into local French cafes known to be crawling with German spies. They'd wear fake shoulder patches for some of the most feared armored divisions, deliberately get a little tipsy, and then accidentally spill highly classified, completely fake information about where they were attacking next.
The masterpiece, Operation Viersen, March 1945. This was the moment all of this high-stakes deception truly culminated. The stakes here were just unimaginably high. The real U.S. Ninth Army was prepping to cross the Rhine River, pushing right into the heart of Germany. If the Germans figured out exactly where they were crossing, it was going to be an absolute massacre. So, the Ghost Army gets called in to create a massive life-or-death distraction just a few miles away from the real spot. To pull off an illusion big enough to trick the entire German defense line, they deployed 1,100 fake vehicles. I mean, just think about the sheer scale of that for a second. 1,100 inflatable tanks and trucks, all perfectly staged to look like an overwhelming invading force.
And of course, they backed up those 1,100 visuals with the ultimate sonic distraction. They're blasting recordings of pontoon bridges being built, and at the very same time, they're completely flooding the radio airwaves with fake Ninth Army chatter. They absolutely overwhelmed the German senses, filling the night sky with the fabricated chaos of an entire army preparing to strike.
And the crazy thing?
It worked flawlessly. The Germans totally swallowed the bait. They scrambled their troops away from the real crossing point and aimed their entire heavy artillery force right at the Ghost Army. So, the Germans end up fiercely bombing a forest full of rubber and speakers, while just a few miles down the river, the real Ninth Army crossed the Rhine with practically zero resistance. Operation Viersen was an absolute triumph. But honestly, what's truly staggering is that this was just one of over 20 large-scale deceptions the Ghost Army pulled off during the war. 20 different times they tricked the enemy using canvas, wire recorders, and just pure ingenuity. The legacy of these artists and sound engineers is absolutely profound. By fighting with creativity instead of bullets, military experts estimate this unit saved between 15,000 and 30,000 American lives. They literally acted as human shields, purposefully drawing heavy artillery fire onto their bouncy castles to protect the real soldiers.
But here's the real kicker. When the war ended, they couldn't tell a soul. The mission was classified so highly that even their own families had no idea what they actually did in Europe. The records were locked away in government vaults for 50 long years, finally being declassified in 1996. And it wasn't until 2024 that these guys were finally awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian honor we have.
They proved that sometimes the most powerful weapon on a battlefield isn't a bomb or a bullet. It's a beautifully crafted story. This explainer really just scratches the surface of this incredible hidden history. So I've got to ask you to ponder this. What is the craziest military deception you've ever heard of? Let me know your favorite trick down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.